Hi guys, this week we are talking about the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. So these are two words that you may have heard before, and they're both different types of disease outbreaks. Today we're going to talk about the difference. So first of all, a disease outbreak is anything that happens when a disease occurs in greater numbers than expected. So it could be for a lot of different reasons. It can last for a long time. It's a very general term for a disease that normally doesn't occur as often as it's happening right now. So sometimes this could be because the disease was new, it's never been seen before, or it's just new to a certain area, or it wasn't around for a long time. People thought it was cured and now it's back. That would be an outbreak. Like I said, there are two different types, an epidemic or a pandemic. So an epidemic is an illness or health-related issue that's showing up more often than it would be expected. You can consider it to be a large outbreak. It spreads very rapidly. Examples of this would be like SARS, a respiratory disease that was in a lot of areas of Asia and then spread to a lot of countries. Ebola was an epidemic that recently occurred. This map is showing a meningitis epidemic in Africa. The countries that are colored in are the countries where meningitis has occurred. Scientists use graphs called epicurves to track epidemics. So what you can see is that throughout time, at the beginning, there are some cases of the disease that are occurring, but not a whole lot of them. This is called endemic. So if a disease occurs a lot, you would say it's endemic in that area. Common colds are endemic in North Carolina. An epidemic would occur when an endemic disease shoots up and becomes a lot more common than it normally would be. So in this graph, it's talking about rabies. All right, so now let's talk about a pandemic. Pandemics are a lot bigger than epidemics. They have a lot more people that are infected with the disease, and it's also a much larger region that's affected. So sometimes pandemics are even global. That would be a very severe pandemic. There are a few ways that an epidemic can become a pandemic, and that means that it has spread to other continents. So that could be people traveling on airplanes, people traveling on boats, a vector traveling on a boat. So the bubonic plague was spread by rats. If a rat got on a trade ship and ended up in Asia, then it would lead to the disease spreading there. Or even by migrating animals. So animals can spread from continent to continent. If you've ever played the game Pandemic, you'll notice that countries will begin shutting their borders when your disease becomes really common, and they'll close shipyards and they'll close airports. And that's because those are the ways that a disease that's epidemic in one place can become pandemic globally. Something the game doesn't account for is the fact that animals can always cross borders. And so that's one way that a disease can spread if it's vector-borne. So epidemics are not worldwide. Some examples of this are malaria. Malaria is really a terrible disease in Africa, but it's not a threat in other parts of the world. Flu strains can begin in one area as an epidemic, but can grow into a pandemic. That happened in 1918, really severe flu. So one thing to keep in mind is that even if a pandemic is happening, it doesn't mean that people are dying from the disease. It just means that the infections are globally spread out. So it's a much wider geographic area. So epidemics are large outbreaks in a localized area, and pandemics are much larger outbreaks that can be across continents and worldwide. That's it for this time. Make sure to do your discussion post, and I'll see you next week. Bye.